for anyone that knows anything about special educational needs, that's madness, and it's really concerning because the transition from primary to secondary is a really crucial, difficult time for young people with additional needs. And so to talk about taking away support at that time really is probably the worst time possible to take it away.
Look, the government also says it's going to spend billions to make mainstream schools in England more inclusive for pupils with special educational needs and disabilities, or SEND, or SEND. The current system has faced enormous criticism. Nearly 1.7 million children have SEND, but state education often cannot support their needs. Here is the Schools Minister, Georgia Gould, speaking to Kate McCann and Stig Abel on Times Radio Breakfast.
At the moment, it's a massive postcode lottery. Some children are getting far more than others, and we want to make sure there is consistent, good quality provision. And we will not accept private equity making money out of vulnerable children. That money will be reinvested into the kind of proposals I'm setting out today.
Well, let's bring in now Jessie Hewitson, who you will know as the Times and Sunday Times' SEND agony aunt. She's also the mum to 2 neurodivergent children. Jessie, good morning.
Morning.
Look, for people who haven't read your column yet, Jessie, you're writing about this regularly for the paper. Give us an idea of the kind of challenges that SEND children and their families face and the type of issues that readers have been bringing to your column.
Yeah, so, if I can give a very specific issue, I've been approached by a reader just this week whose grandchild is a 6-year-old non-verbal child, autistic ADHD, still wearing nappies in year 1 at school, and the parent uses kind of reins really on the child because otherwise the parent fears that he'll run across the road and be a danger to himself. And this child is in a mainstream setting, and I just want to highlight that because I think most people would agree that this child shouldn't be in mainstream and this child be in a specialist school. Mm-hmm. But the reader's concern is that because the mum has mental health issues, the local authority has kind of forced this child into mainstream because it's cheaper.
Right.
And so that's the big concern, is that very big decisions are being made for children, not based on the law, not based on the child's best interests, but based on, costs.
Based on cost, and I guess as well how proactive the parents are in making the local authority pay. Look, we haven't seen the full plans yet. They're emerging today. But one incendiary issue is going to be whether education, health and care plans given to SEND pupils can then be taken away. What will parents be watching for in that vein?
Yeah, so what we've been told via the Times is that they may well, the point at which local authorities may try to take them away is at transition points. So, for example, when a child leaves primary and goes to secondary school, and that in the new system, that's going to be the approach. But for anyone that knows anything about special educational needs, that's madness, and it's really concerning because the transition from primary to secondary is a really crucial, difficult time for young people with additional needs. And so to talk about taking away support at that time really is probably the worst time possible to take it away.
Part of what we believe the government plans to do is to improve SEND support in mainstream schools, including training all teachers in SEND. But how realistic is it for teachers to meet the demands of SEND children while they're also managing classes of 20 to 30 other pupils? Does that even make sense as a concept?
It doesn't without significant investment in this area and also significant oversight and support of schools. And I think how I feel is that, some of which it sounds like is going to be announced is encouraging and is good ideas. But the issue is who is overseeing it. It feels a bit like, the DfE, the Department for Education and local authorities the Department for Education mainly has kind of broken the system. And now we're being asked to trust them while they fix it. And also, local authorities around the country are routinely breaking the law. We know that because Ministry of Justice data shows that when parents challenge decisions at court, they win 98% of the time. But these reforms are going to hand over a lot more control to local authorities. And it's not clear whether the oversight or accountability is going to increase.
There's always huge debate, Jessie, about whether SEND is overdiagnosed. What evidence is there to support those claims that people make? And how does this impact public perception on all this? How does it? This must make it all much even more of a minefield to deal with, not just journalistically, but particularly journalistically.
Yeah, I think there is a very real perception that some parents are after special treatment for their children who are kind of experiencing like normal life problems. So getting off buying a diagnosis and then the taxpayers have to fund it. But I mean, in truth, there is probably evidence for both sides, like to point towards diagnosis, overdiagnosis being the issue, but there's also evidence to point to underdiagnosis being an issue. My reading of it is the evidence showing that underdiagnosis is the real issue is far more robust and stronger. And, you know, that really we've just got better at identifying, for example, autism and ADHD in girls, people who aren't white, and kids who aren't, you know, throwing a chair around the classroom. I actually think these brain types are just not as rare as we once thought, and that's fine, but it's not a crisis of overdiagnosis.
Look, I mean, part of the reason why this becomes politically contentious, of course, is because there are already cost pressures on a struggling school system. Do you think the government's new plans, can they build a broad political consensus? Is that remotely feasible, or is this going to turn into a kind of, you know, yet another sort of political kind of culture war issue?
I think there is the potential that will happen, and the fact that Keir Starmer wrote an opinion piece today referencing his brother, I think arguably shows how worried they are about the backlash. I mean, we know that local MPs, one of the issue that takes up the most of their time is around the send. You know, parents are desperately going towards them to ask for help. So I think it is going to be tricky for the government, and they are, you know, going to try and convince us that this is, you know, this is really about making a broken system work. But what a lot of us worry about is that what it's also about is taking away legal rights for disabled children in school that may never come back.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Jessie Hewitson there. You can send your questions to Jessie at sendforhelp@thetimes.co.uk, and her Send Agony Aunt column appears in the Times twice a month. Thank you, Jessie. Mark Ludlow's still with me. Mark, as Jessie mentioned, the Prime Minister's written in the Times today about his own brother Nick, who had learning difficulties from complications at birth, and he makes it sound like these reforms that we're hearing about today and this week, they're very, very personal to him, politically speaking.
Yeah, look, I think one criticism of Keir Starmer is seen as a bit robotic. And I think him writing about his brother's experience puts a more human element to him. And so I think it's actually, I think when politicians are trying to push something through with reforms, putting a human side to him and obviously talking about his brother's experience, help humanise the Prime Minister himself and will probably help him push through these reforms.
Yeah, indeed.